Commander Jiwan stared at the screen in front of her. The numbers did not make sense. She rubbed her eyes and looked again. The energy readings were still there, bright and impossible. Admiral Kyung needs to see this, she said to herself. The bridge of the Altarian ship Sovereign was quiet. Most of the crew worked the night shift. Jiwan had been watching the dead zone around the Sol system for 3 years. Nothing ever happened there. The humans were trapped behind the barrier that the Galactic Council had built around their planet, 200 years ago. Jiwan walked quickly to Admiral Kyung's quarters. Her footsteps echoed in the empty hallway. She pressed the door chime and waited. "Come in," said a tired voice. Admiral Kyung sat at his desk reading reports. He was an old man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had been guarding the human quarantine longer than anyone else in the fleet. "Admiral, we have a problem," Jiwan said. Kyung looked up from his papers. "What kind of problem?" "The Sol system is showing massive energy signatures. The readings are off the scale." Kyung frowned. "That's impossible. The humans can't even leave their planet. Our barrier makes sure of that. Sir, you need to see the data yourself." They walked back to the bridge together. Jiwan showed him the screen with the energy readings. Kyung studied the numbers for a long time. "This must be a sensor error," he said finally. "Run a full diagnostic on all systems." "I already did that twice, sir. The sensors are working perfectly." "Then run it again." Jiwan nodded, but she knew the sensors were fine. Something was happening in the Sol system. Something big. 3 decks below, Dr. Nari was also having trouble sleeping. She worked in the science lab, studying human radio signals that leaked through the barrier. For years she had listened to their music, their news, their conversations. The humans fascinated her. Most Altarians thought humans were simple and violent. The Council had decided long ago that humans were too dangerous to join galactic society. They built the barrier to keep Earth isolated until the humans either destroyed themselves or evolved into something peaceful. But Nari had noticed something strange in the human transmissions. Their technology was growing faster than anyone expected. Much faster. She pulled up her latest analysis on her computer. The humans had been sending quantum-encrypted messages for the past 50 years. The Council thought these were just random signals. But Nari had spent months trying to decode them. What she found made her hands shake. The humans were not trapped. They had broken through the barrier decades ago. They had been exploring space in secret. And now they were coming. Nari ran to her communication panel and called the bridge. "This is Dr. Nari in the science lab. I need to speak with Admiral Kyung immediately." "The Admiral is busy with a sensor problem," came the reply. "This is about the humans. It's urgent." A few minutes later, Admiral Kyung's voice came through the speaker. "What is it, Doctor?" "Admiral, I've been analyzing human quantum transmissions. They've been building ships, big ships, and they're heading this way." There was silence on the communication channel. "That's impossible," Kyung said finally. "The barrier prevents them from leaving their solar system." "Sir, I think they learned how to break through it. The quantum signatures match theoretical calculations for faster-than-light travel." "Doctor, you're talking nonsense. The humans don't have that technology." "Admiral, please look at Sector 7 of the perimeter. I'm sending you coordinates now." On the bridge, Jiwan watched as new contacts appeared on the long-range sensors. At first, there were just a few small blips. Then more appeared. And more. "Sir," she said quietly, "we have incoming ships." Admiral Kyung looked at the display. His face went pale. "How many?" he asked. 12 large contacts, sir, and they're moving fast." "From where?" Jiwan checked her readings twice before answering. "From inside the Sol system, sir." The bridge fell silent. Everyone stared at the screen. The impossible was happening right in front of them. "Sound the alert," Kyung ordered. "All ships to battle stations. Send an emergency message to the Council." Red lights flashed throughout. The ship. Alarms rang in every corridor. The crew ran to their posts. In minutes, the Sovereign was ready for battle. But as the human ships came closer, it became clear that this would not be an ordinary battle. The human vessels were massive. Each one was larger than 3 Altarian battleships put together. Their hulls were dark and smooth, unlike anything in the Council database. "Sir," Jiwan reported, "the lead ship is trying to communicate with us. Put it on screen." The main display flickered, and showed the interior of a human bridge. A man in a blue uniform sat in the captain's chair. He had black hair and calm eyes. When he spoke, his voice was clear and confident. "This is Captain Do-Yun of the Earth ship Soul's Pride. We come in peace, but we are prepared for war if necessary." Admiral Kyung stepped forward. "I am Admiral Kyung of the Galactic Council. You are violating the quarantine around your system. Return to Earth immediately." Captain Do-Yun smiled. "Admiral, we have been watching you for a very long time. We know about your council. We know about your plans for Earth. And we know that you have kept other species locked away just like us. You don't understand what you're dealing with, human. The Council has the power to destroy your entire species." "Perhaps," Do-Yun said. "But first, you would have to catch us." The human ships suddenly changed direction. They moved in perfect formation, faster than anything the Altarians had ever seen. In seconds, they had surrounded the entire Altarian fleet. "Impossible," whispered Kyung. "No ship can move that fast." Dr. Nari watched from the science lab as her instruments went crazy. The human ships were using some kind of technology that bent space around them. They could appear anywhere they wanted in an instant. "Admiral," Ji-Wan called out, "they're scanning us." All ships raised shields and prepare to fire. But before the Altarians could act, every system on every ship stopped working. The lights went out. The engines shut down. Even the life support systems paused for a moment before restarting. "What did they do to us?" Kyung demanded. Captain Do-Hyun's voice came through the speakers. "We disabled your weapons and engines. Don't worry, we haven't hurt anyone. We just want to talk." "This is an act of war," Kyung said. "No, Admiral. This is an act of freedom. We're here to change things. The age of the Council's control is over." Ji-Wan stared at the tactical display. The human ships had completely surrounded the Altarian fleet without firing a single shot. Their technology was beyond anything she had imagined. Dr. Nari understood now why the humans had been so quiet for so long. They had been preparing, learning, building, and now they were ready to take their place in the galaxy. Admiral Kyung sat down heavily in his command chair. For 40 years, he had kept Earth isolated. He had believed the humans were dangerous primitives who needed to be contained. But looking at the ships around him, he realized the truth. The humans were not primitive. They were not contained. And they were definitely not afraid. "What do you want?" he asked. "Justice," Captain Do-Yun replied. "For Earth. For every species your council has imprisoned. We want freedom for all." The quarantine was broken. After 200 years, humanity had finally come to claim their place among the stars, and they had brought friends. Captain Do-Hyun stood on the bridge of the Soul's Pride and watched the Altarian ships floating helplessly in space. His crew worked quietly at their stations. They had trained for this moment for years. "Sir," said Lieutenant Minseo from the communications station, "we're receiving multiple emergency transmissions from the Altarian fleet. They're calling for reinforcements." "Let them call," Do-Hyun replied. "We want the Council to know we're here." Behind him, Ambassador Yunji checked her translation programs one more time. She had studied Altarian language and culture for 20 years. Today she would make first contact between Earth and the galaxy. "Captain," she said, "I'm ready to begin diplomatic protocols." "Good. Open a channel to all Altarian ships." The main screen showed Admiral Kyung's worried face. Behind him, Altarian officers ran around trying to fix their broken systems. "Admiral," Ambassador Yunji said in perfect Altarian, "I am Ambassador Yunji of the United Earth Federation. We request formal diplomatic talks." Kyung looked surprised. "You speak our language very well for a primitive species." Yunji smiled. "We have been listening to your transmissions for over 100 years, Admiral. We know your language, your customs, and your laws. We also know about the crimes your council has committed." "Crimes?" "We protected the galaxy from dangerous species. You imprisoned entire civilizations without trial. You decided their fate without ever speaking to them. That is not protection. That is tyranny." On the bridge of the Sovereign, Dr. Nari studied the human ships with her sensors. What she found made no sense. The hulls were made of materials that should not exist. The energy output was impossible, and somehow the ships were generating their own gravity. "Admiral," she called to Kyung. These ships are using technology we don't understand. They're not just advanced, they're revolutionary. How revolutionary? Kyung asked. They're generating power from something other than fusion or antimatter. I can't even detect what fuel they're using, and their hull material is absorbing our sensor beams. Ambassador Yunji continued her transmission to the Altarian fleet. We know you have held 17 species in quarantine over the past 1,000 years. We know that 3 of those species destroyed themselves trying to break free. We know that 4 others simply gave up and stopped advancing their technology. Those species were dangerous, Kyung protested. They would have brought war to the galaxy, like the Karani, the peaceful traders you locked away because they were too good at negotiating, or the Vorthon, who you imprisoned because they asked too many questions about council authority. Kyung's face went pale. The Karani and Vorthon quarantines were classified information. How did the humans know about them? On another human ship, the Incheon's Hammer, General Wu Jin watched the tactical situation develop. He commanded the military escort for the diplomatic mission. 12 dreadnoughts seemed like a lot, but they were just the advance guard. Behind them, hidden in the space between stars, waited the real Earth fleet. General, reported Major Hyonu, long-range sensors show Altarian reinforcements approaching. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. How many ships? At least 50, sir. Possibly more. Wu Jin nodded. Send word to the Shadow Fleet. Tell them to prepare for Phase 2. Back on the Soul's Pride, Captain Do-Yun received an urgent message from Earth. President Minho wanted to speak directly to the Altarian Admiral. Admiral Kyung, Do-Hyun said. The President of Earth would like to address you personally. The main screen changed to show an office on Earth. President Minho sat behind a simple desk. He was a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a serious expression. Admiral Kyung, Minho said, I am President Minho of the United Earth Federation. I speak for all of humanity today. President, Kyung replied, your ships have committed an act of war against the Galactic Council. We have disabled your weapons to prevent bloodshed. We could have destroyed your fleet, but we chose not to. That should tell you something about our true nature. It tells me you're more dangerous than we thought. Minho leaned forward. Admiral, your council made a mistake 200 years ago. You assumed that because humans fight, we must be violent. You missed the most important truth about our species. What truth? We fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Every war in human history was ultimately about defending something precious. Our families, our freedom, our future. Doctor. Nari listened to the conversation while analyzing more data from the human ships. She discovered something incredible. The humans had not just broken through the barrier around Earth. They had learned how to create their own barriers. Each ship was surrounded by a protective field that made it nearly indestructible. Admiral, she said urgently, the human ships are using modified versions of our own containment technology. They turned our prison into a shield. Ambassador Yunji heard Dr. Nari's transmission through their open communication channel. She smiled. Dr. Nari is correct, she said. We studied your barrier for decades. We learned how it worked. Then we improved it. What you built to keep us trapped, we rebuilt to keep us safe. Impossible, Kyung said. That technology took our greatest scientists centuries to develop. Your scientists built it to contain. Our scientists built it to liberate. When you're fighting for freedom, you find ways to do impossible things. President Minho continued his address. Admiral, we didn't come here to start a war. We came to end one. For 1,000 years, your council has decided which species deserve freedom and which deserve imprisonment. That ends today. You cannot challenge the entire Galactic Council with 12 ships. General Wu Jin chose that moment to reveal the truth. Admiral, he said, appearing on a split screen, we brought more than 12 ships. The space around the Altarian fleet suddenly filled with new contacts. Hundreds of human ships materialized out of nowhere. They had been hiding using stealth technology that made them completely invisible. Commander Jiwon stared at her sensors in shock. Sir, we're surrounded by over 300 vessels. Where did they come from? Kyung demanded. They were cloaked, Dr. Nari whispered. They've been here the whole time. Captain Do-Yun spoke calmly. We wanted you to see what we could do with just 12 ships before we showed you our full strength. The human fleet formed a perfect sphere around the Altarians. Each ship was massive and sleek. They moved in perfect coordination, like a school of fish or a flock of birds. "Admiral," Ambassador Yunji said, "we're transmitting our formal demands to your council. First, immediate release of all quarantined species. Second, reparations for the damage caused by forced isolation. Third, full membership for Earth in galactic government. The Council will never agree to those terms. Then we'll make them agree," General Wu Jin said simply. President Minho stood up in his office on Earth. "Admiral, we've been patient for 200 years. We used that time to learn, to grow, to prepare. Now we're ready to take our place in the galaxy. The question is whether the Council will accept us as equals or face us as enemies. You're threatening war against civilizations that have existed for millions of years. We're offering peace to civilizations that have forgotten what freedom means," Minho replied. Dr. Nari continued studying the human technology. Each new scan revealed something more amazing. The humans had developed faster-than-light communication, matter replication, and energy weapons that could bypass any known defense. "Admiral," she said quietly, "I don't think we can stop them. Their technology is beyond anything we've ever seen." Kyung looked around his bridge. His officers were frightened, his ships were helpless. And somewhere in the galaxy, the Council was about to learn that their greatest fear had come true. The humans had not destroyed themselves. They had not given up. They had become something incredible. "What happens now?" Kyung asked. Ambassador Yunji smiled. "Now we wait for your council to decide. They can choose to negotiate with us as equals, or they can choose to fight a war they cannot win. And if they choose war," Captain Do-hyun answered, "then we'll show them why the galaxy needs protectors, not rulers." The Altarian fleet floated in space, surrounded by human ships. For the first time in 1,000 years, the Galactic Council faced a species that could not be controlled or contained. The age of quarantine was over. The age of freedom was about to begin. The Galactic Council met in emergency session on the capital world of Altaris Prime. The Great Chamber buzzed with worried voices from dozens of different species. At the center of the room, Counselor Jamin studied the reports from Admiral Kyung with growing dread. "The humans disabled an entire fleet without firing a shot," he said to the assembled council. "This changes everything." High Counselor Vex, leader of the council for 3 centuries, slammed his staff on the floor. "Impossible. The humans are a primitive species. Our barrier has contained them for 200 years. "Not contained," said Counselor Jamin. "Hidden. There's a difference." On the screens around the chamber, the council watched video feeds from the Altarian fleet. Human ships moved through space like living things. They flowed around obstacles and reformed their formations without any visible communication. Fleet. Admiral Su-young appeared on the main screen from her flagship Busan's Defiance. She was a tall woman with short black hair and steady eyes. Behind her, the bridge of her ship hummed with quiet efficiency. "Honorable counselors," she said in perfect galactic standard, "I am Fleet Admiral Su-young of the Earth Defense Force. We request immediate audience with your full council." "You request?" High Counselor Vex laughed. "You are criminals who have violated the most sacred laws of our civilization. We are representatives of a free people who refuse to accept unjust imprisonment." Counselor Jamin stepped forward. "Admiral, how did your people break through our containment barrier?" Su-young smiled. "Counselor, you made a critical error 200 years ago. You assumed the barrier would keep us isolated from the galaxy. Instead, it gave us the perfect laboratory to study your technology." "Explain." "Every day for 2 centuries, our scientists examined every particle of energy that passed through your barrier. We learned how it worked. We learned how to modify it. And eventually, we learned how to control it." The council chamber fell silent. The barrier around Earth was their greatest technological achievement. It had taken 50 years and the combined knowledge of a dozen species to build. "Admiral," said Counselor Than of the Krolex species, "our barrier is based on principles your species could not possibly understand. The manipulation of quantum field dynamics through controlled gravitational distortion," Su-young replied casually. We understood it perfectly. We just needed time to build the tools to work with it. Dr. Nari's voice came through the communication system from the Sovereign. Counselors, I've been studying their ships. They're not just using our barrier technology. They've improved it beyond anything we thought possible. President Minho appeared on another screen, broadcasting directly from the White House on Earth. The room behind him was simple but elegant. Maps of Earth covered the walls, showing a world at peace. Honored counselors, he said, I am President Minho of the United Earth Federation. I come before you not as a conqueror, but as a liberator. Liberator? High Counselor Vex scoffed. You threaten our ships with weapons of war. We disabled your weapons to prevent bloodshed. We could have destroyed Admiral Kyung's fleet in seconds. Instead, we chose to talk. That should tell you something about who we really are. Counselor Jamin studied the human president carefully. What do you want from us? Justice. Freedom. An end to the tyranny you call protection. We have maintained peace in the galaxy for 1,000 years. You have maintained control, President. Minho corrected. Peace built on oppression is not true peace. It's just delayed war. Engineer Tae-hyun materialized on another screen from the human research vessel Daigu's vision. He was young, maybe 30 years old, with bright eyes and excited energy. Counselors, he said, we've prepared a demonstration of human technology. With your permission, we'd like to show you what we learned during our isolation. What kind of demonstration? Counselor Jamin asked. Watch your sensors, Tae-hyun said. The space around Altaris Prime suddenly lit up with new contacts. Dozens of human ships appeared from nothing. They had been hiding in the system for hours, completely invisible to the most advanced sensors in the galaxy. Impossible, breathed High Counselor Vex. No cloaking technology can hide from our detection grid. We're not using cloaking, Engineer Tae-hyun explained. We're bending space around our ships. To your sensors, we simply don't exist in normal space-time. The human ships began to move in complex patterns around the planet. They wove between orbital stations and defense platforms without triggering any alarms. They moved through shield barriers as if they weren't there. Our shields mean nothing to them, Counselor Than whispered. Fleet Admiral Su-young spoke again. Counselors, we didn't develop this technology to attack you. We developed it to protect ourselves and others. For 200 years, you taught us that the galaxy was a dangerous place full of species that wanted to control or destroy us. We were protecting you from dangerous influences. You were protecting yourselves from dangerous ideas, President, Minho said. Ideas like freedom, equality, and the right to determine our own destiny. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Some members demanded immediate military action. Others called for negotiation. A few suggested retreat. Counselor Jamin raised his hand for silence. President Minho, what are your formal demands? First, immediate release of all species currently held in quarantine. Second, reparations for the economic and technological damage caused by forced isolation. Third, dissolution of the current council structure and creation of a new galactic government based on equality and representation. Those terms are unacceptable, High Counselor Vex declared. We will not surrender our authority to upstart primitives. Commander, Young-Soo appeared on a new screen from his ship Gwangju's Sword. He wore the uniform of Earth's Special Operations Command. His face was calm, but his eyes were steel. Counselors, he said, while you've been talking, we've been working. 3 quarantine species received liberation packages from Earth this morning. The Karani, the Vorthon, and the Zelian are now free to leave their systems. That's impossible, Counselor Thon said. Those systems are heavily guarded. Not anymore, Young-Soo replied. Our special operations teams disabled the quarantine barriers and delivered advanced technology to all 3 species. They're building their own liberation fleets as we speak. The screens around the council chamber showed new images. Ships were launching from the Karani homeworld. The Vorthon were broadcasting messages of freedom to other imprisoned species. The Zelian were dismantling council monitoring stations in their system. You've started a rebellion, High Counselor Vex accused. We've started a revolution, President Minho corrected. The age of the council's absolute power is ending. You can either accept change peacefully or fight a war you cannot win. Dr. Nari's voice came through the speakers again. Counselors, I'm detecting massive energy buildups in human space. They have ships we haven't seen yet. Hundreds of them. Fleet Admiral Su Young nodded. The ships you see now are just our diplomatic escort. Earth's main battle fleet is still in our home system. We brought enough force to defend ourselves, not to conquer you. Then what do you want? Counselor Jamin asked. Partnership, President Minho said simply. We want to work with you to build a better galaxy, one where species are judged by their actions, not their potential for violence. Engineer Tae-hyun spoke up. Counselors, we've made incredible discoveries during our isolation. New forms of energy, revolutionary medical treatments, faster-than-light communication systems. We want to share these advances with everyone. In exchange for what? High Counselor Vex demanded. Freedom, Fleet Admiral Su Young replied. Freedom for all species to grow, to explore, to reach their full potential without fear of imprisonment or control. The council chamber fell silent as the members considered the human offer. They were facing a choice that would determine the future of galactic civilization. Counselor Jamin looked around the room at his fellow council members. Some were afraid. Some were angry. A few looked thoughtful. Humans, he said finally, you ask us to abandon everything we've built. We ask you to build something better, President Minho replied. Together. The human ships continued their demonstration around Alterus Prime. They moved with grace and power, showing technology that surpassed anything the Council possessed. But they made no threatening moves. They simply existed, waiting for the Council's decision. What happens if we refuse? High Counselor Vex asked. Commander Young-Soo answered. Then more species will break free on their own. The revolution will spread across the galaxy. And eventually you'll face not just Earth, but dozens of liberated civilizations who remember how you treated them. And if we accept? Then we build a new galactic civilization together, President Minho said. One based on cooperation instead of control. One where every species has a voice. The Council faced the most important decision in galactic history. The humans waited patiently for their answer. The age of quarantine was ending. The question was whether it would end in war or in wisdom. Admiral Hana stood on the bridge of the massive Council battleship Eternal Dominion and watched her fleet prepare for war. 300 ships from 12 different species had gathered in the Proxima sector. It was the largest military force assembled in 500 years. Admiral, reported Captain Zenth, all ships are ready for hyperspace jump to the human positions. Hana nodded grimly. The Council had voted for military action after 3 days of heated debate. High Counselor Vex had convinced them that showing weakness to the humans would encourage other species to rebel. Admiral, called the communications officer, we're receiving another transmission from the human president. Put it through. President Minho appeared on the main screen. He looked, tired but determined. Behind him, other human leaders were visible in what appeared to be an emergency meeting. Admiral Hana, Minho said, we know your fleet is approaching our positions. This doesn't have to end in bloodshed. President Minho, you have violated every law of galactic civilization. The Council cannot allow your rebellion to continue. Then the Council chooses war. You chose war when you broke the quarantine and freed other species. Minho shook his head sadly. Admiral, we offered you partnership. We offered to share our technology and work together for a better galaxy. You chose violence instead. On the Human Command ship Soul's Pride, Captain Do-hyun watched the approaching Council fleet on his tactical display. The enemy ships were powerful and numerous, but they were using technology that was centuries old. Sir, reported Lieutenant Minseo, Admiral Hana's fleet will arrive in 4 hours. Signal the fleet, Do-hyun ordered. Begin defensive preparations. Engineer Tae-hyun worked frantically in his laboratory aboard the Daegu's Vision. He was preparing humanity's greatest secret for combat use. For 200 years, human scientists had studied the quantum foundations of reality itself. What they had discovered would change warfare forever. Tae-hyun to all ships, he broadcast. Quantum field. Generators are online. Initiating spatial displacement protocols. Around the human fleet, space itself began to bend and twist. The ships didn't move, but the space around them shifted. Distances became meaningless. What looked like empty space might contain an entire battleship. Admiral Hana's fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system. What they found made no sense. The human ships were scattered across impossible distances, yet somehow still in formation. "Where are they?" demanded Captain Zenth. "Everywhere and nowhere," replied the sensor officer. "The readings don't make sense. They're in multiple locations at once." Commander Young-Soo led a special operations team through the twisted space around the Council fleet. His ship, Gwangju's Sword, could phase in and out of normal reality at will. They had been tasked with disabling the Council's command structure without killing anyone. "Team leaders, report status," he said into his communicator. "Team Alpha is in position near the Eternal Dominion," came the reply. "Team Beta has reached the Krolex command ship. Team Gamma is standing by at the Vorthon battlecruiser." Young-Soo smiled. The Council had brought ships from many species, but they had no idea how to coordinate their different technologies effectively. Admiral Hana stared at her tactical display in confusion. The human ships seemed to be everywhere at once. Her targeting computers couldn't lock onto anything solid. "All ships, begin attack run," she ordered. The Council fleet charged forward, energy weapons blazing. Brilliant beams of light crossed the space between the fleets. But the human ships simply weren't there when the weapons arrived. "Impossible," breathed Captain Zenth. "We're hitting nothing but empty space." Engineer Tae-hyun's voice came across all human channels. "Phase 2 is ready. All ships, prepare for demonstration of defensive capabilities." The human ships suddenly appeared in perfect formation, directly in front of the Council fleet. They were so close that collision seemed inevitable. But instead of crashing, something miraculous happened. The Council ships passed right through the human vessels as if they were ghosts. "What's happening?" Admiral Hana demanded. "The humans are operating in a different phase of space-time," her science officer explained. "They're here but not here, real but not solid." President Minho's voice came over the communications system. "Admiral Hana, we are showing you our defensive technology. Your weapons cannot harm us because we exist slightly outside normal space, but we can still affect your ships." To prove his point, every Council ship suddenly lost power. Engines shut down. Weapons stopped working. Life support systems flickered but remained online. "This is how we disabled Admiral Kyoung's fleet," Captain Do-Yun explained. "We can reach into normal space from our phase-shifted position and affect your systems directly." Admiral Hana found herself helpless in the middle of the largest military force in galactic history. Every ship was dead in space. "How are you doing this?" she asked. Engineer Tae-hyun appeared on her screen. "Admiral, we spent 200 years studying the fundamental forces of the universe. Matter, energy, space, and time are all connected. When you understand those connections, you can manipulate them." Commander Young-Soo chose that moment to appear on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion. He materialized out of thin air behind Admiral Hana's command chair. "Admiral," he said politely, "we could have killed everyone on your fleet in the first minute of battle. Instead, we're offering you the chance to surrender with honor." Hana spun around, her hand reaching for her weapon. But Young-Soo made no threatening moves. He simply stood there, calm and respectful. "How did you get on my ship?" she demanded. "The same way we got onto every command ship in your fleet. Phase-shifting technology allows us to move through solid matter at will." All across the Council fleet, human special forces teams were appearing on bridges and in command centers. They were polite but firm. No one was hurt, but it was clear that the humans could go anywhere they wanted. "Admiral," reported Captain Zenth, "we have intruders on every ship in the fleet." "Are they attacking?" "No, sir. They're just standing there." President Minho appeared on Admiral Hana's main screen again. "Admiral, your fleet is completely at our mercy. We could destroy every ship, kill every crew member, and conquer every world in the Council. But that's not who we are." "Then what do you want?" "We want you to understand. The galaxy doesn't need rulers. It needs protectors. It needs species who will fight for the weak instead of controlling them." Fleet Admiral Soo-young's image joined the communication. "Admiral Hana, we're going to restore power to your ships. Then we're going to show you something important." The Council ships came back to life as their systems reactivated, but their weapons remained offline. "Follow us," Soo-young said. The human fleet began moving toward the edge of the Sol system. The Council ships found themselves gently pulled along by invisible forces. "Where are you taking us?" Admiral Hana asked. to see what we've really been doing for the past 200 years. As they traveled deeper into human space, Admiral Hana saw wonders that defied explanation. Massive space stations orbited every planet. Ships moved between worlds in perfect streams of organized traffic, and everywhere there were signs of incredible technology. Earth has 14 billion people, President Minho explained. But that's not our whole population anymore. The fleet passed Mars, which had been completely transformed. Cities covered, the surface under protective domes. Ships launched from orbital platforms every few minutes. Mars has 8 billion residents, Engineer Tae-hyun said, all volunteers who wanted to help build humanity's space civilization. They continued past Jupiter, where massive mining operations harvested resources from the gas giant's moons. Space. Elevators stretched from the surface of Europa to orbital factories that produced materials unknown to Council science. We didn't spend 200 years planning war, Captain Do-hyun explained. We spent them building a civilization that could protect others. The final destination was a space station larger than any city. It orbited beyond Pluto at the very edge of the solar system. Thousands of ships were docked at its ports. This is Humanity Station, Fleet Admiral Soo-young said. Our gift to the galaxy. What is it? Admiral Hana asked. A refuge, President Minho replied. Any species that wants freedom can come here. We'll give them technology, resources, and protection while they build their own fleets. Commander Young-soo, still standing on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, pointed to the screens showing the station. Admiral, 3 liberated species are already here. The Karani arrived yesterday. The Vorthan are building ships in our factories. The Zelian are training with our military advisors. You're building an army. We're building hope, President Minho corrected. Every species deserves the chance to reach its potential without fear. Admiral Hana stared at the massive station and the ships surrounding it. The humans had built something incredible during their isolation. They had become everything the Council feared, a species capable of changing the galaxy. But they were also something the Council had never expected, a species that used their power to protect others instead of controlling them. What happens now? She asked. Now you choose, President Minho said. You can return to the Council and report what you've seen. Tell them that humanity is ready to take its place in the galaxy. Tell them that the age of quarantine is over. 6 months after Admiral Hana returned to the Council with her report, Chancellor Hyunwoo stood at the podium of the new Galactic Assembly. The Great Hall was filled with representatives from 47 different species. Many wore the simple blue badges that marked them as former quarantine survivors. Today marks the beginning of a new age, Hyunwoo said into the translation devices that carried his words to every species present. An age where no civilization stands alone and no species decides the fate of others. In the front row, President Minho smiled as he watched the ceremony. The transition from council rule to assembly democracy had not been easy. 3 council worlds had tried to maintain independence. 2 had fallen to liberation fleets led by freed species. The 3rd had surrendered when its own people voted to join the assembly. Dr. Ariam worked in her laboratory aboard the research station New Horizon, which orbited the assembly's new capital world. She was leading the Universal Technology Exchange, sharing human discoveries with scientists from dozens of species. Dr. Ariam, called her assistant, a young Karani named Veltar. The Vorthan delegation wants to discuss faster-than-light communication, protocols. Schedule them for tomorrow, Ariam replied. Today we're focused on medical technology transfers. The exchange had produced incredible results. Human quantum healing techniques, combined with Zelian biomanipulation, had created treatments for diseases that had plagued the galaxy for millennia. Krolex engineering merged with human space-folding technology was revolutionizing space travel. Captain Isol commanded the first integrated crew in galactic history aboard the exploration vessel Unity's Dream. Her bridge crew included humans, Karani traders, Vorthan scientists, and even former council species who had joined the assembly. Captain, reported Navigator Jorim, a Vorthan with pale blue skin and large eyes, we're approaching the Helix Nebula Survey Zone. Take us in carefully, Isol ordered. Remember, we're explorers now, not conquerors. The ship moved into the nebula using human phase-shifting technology guided by Vorthan's sensor arrays. It was a perfect example of how different species could work together when they shared common goals. Back on Earth, Fleet Admiral Su Yung reviewed reports from liberation operations across the galaxy. 12 more quarantined species had been freed in the past month. Each one chose to join the assembly rather than remain isolated. "Admiral," said Colonel Da-Hyun, "the Altarian survivors have voted to dissolve their government and join the assembly as individual worlds." "Good," Su Yung replied. "What about the resistance movements on the Outer Rim?" 3 more Council holdout systems have fallen. The inhabitants welcomed the liberation fleets as heroes. The irony was not lost on So Yung. The Council's greatest fear had been that aggressive species would bring war to the galaxy. Instead, the most aggressive species in history was bringing peace through strength and protection through power. Admiral Hana, now serving as Minister of Defense for the Assembly, met with human military advisors in the Assembly capital. She had become one of humanity's strongest supporters after seeing what they could accomplish. "Minister," said General Wu Jin, "we've completed defensive preparations for the newly liberated worlds. Each system now has protection against any remaining Council forces." "What about the old quarantine barriers?" Hana asked. "We're converting them into protective shields. Instead of keeping species trapped, they'll keep invaders out." Dr. Nari, who had requested transfer to the Assembly Science Division, worked alongside engineer Tae-hyun to study the fundamental forces that humanity had learned to manipulate. Their research was opening new frontiers in physics. "Dr. Nari," Tae-hyun said excitedly, "look at these readings. We found a way to create stable wormholes between distant galaxies." "Incredible," Nari replied. "With this technology, we could explore beyond our own galaxy." "But first," Tae-hyun said seriously, "we need to make sure our own galaxy is truly free." In the Assembly Hall, Chancellor Hyunwoo was addressing the question of remaining Council resistance. High Councillor Vex had fled to a remote system with a small fleet of loyalists. They were launching raids against liberated worlds. "The old Council represents the past," Hyunwoo told the Assembly. "A past where fear ruled instead of hope. We will not repeat their mistakes by becoming oppressors ourselves." Councillor Jamin, who had joined the Assembly after the Council's collapse, stood to speak. "Chancellor, I motion that we offer amnesty to all former Council members who renounce violence and accept Assembly authority." "Seconded," said several voices from around the hall. "The motion passes," Hyunwoo announced. "We extend the hand of friendship even to our former enemies." President Minyo watched the vote with satisfaction. This was what humanity had always fought for. The chance to build something better instead of just tearing down what was wrong. Commander Young-soo led a special mission to contact High Councillor Vex directly. His ship Gwangju's Sword appeared, suddenly in the middle of Vex's hidden fleet, demonstrating that nowhere in the galaxy was beyond human reach. "High Councillor," Young-soo said over the communication system, "the Assembly offers you and your followers full pardons if you cease hostilities." Vex appeared on screen, looking older and more tired than before. "You offer mercy to those who would have destroyed you?" "We offer wisdom to those who are ready to accept it," Young-soo replied. "The galaxy has room for everyone, Councillor, even those who made mistakes. And if I refuse, then you'll spend the rest of your life running from ghosts. Every shadow could hide a human ship. Every star system could be our next base. Is that really how you want to live?" High Councillor Vex looked around his bridge at his remaining loyal officers. They were exhausted from months of running and hiding. The galaxy had changed, and they were relics of a system that no longer existed. "What guarantees do we have?" he asked finally. "The same guarantee we give everyone," President Minho said, appearing on a second screen. "The chance to build a better future." Captain Isol and her mixed crew were exploring the Galactic Rim when they received news of Vex's surrender. The last remnant of Council resistance had finally ended. "Captain," said Navigator Jorim, "we're receiving celebration broadcasts from across the galaxy. The war is over." "No," Isol corrected gently. "The liberation is complete. Now the real work begins." Dr. Ariam announced the first major breakthrough of the Universal Technology Exchange. "We've successfully created a universal healing chamber," she told the Assembly. "It combines medical knowledge from 15 different species. We can now treat injuries and diseases that were previously incurable. The chamber was installed on every world in the assembly within 6 months. Former enemies worked together to heal the wounds of centuries of conflict. Engineer Taehyun revealed humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy, the knowledge of how to manipulate space and time itself. But instead of keeping it secret, Earth shared it freely with all assembly members. Power shared is power multiplied, he explained to a gathering of scientists. When everyone has access to advanced technology, everyone benefits. Chancellor Hyun-woo stood before the assembly 1 year after its founding and delivered his annual address. "We have accomplished something that many thought impossible," he said. "We have created a civilization based on cooperation instead of domination. 47 species now work together as equals. Former prisoners now serve as leaders. Yesterday's enemies have become today's partners." President Minho added his own thoughts to the ceremony. Humanity spent 200 years learning a simple truth. Real strength comes from lifting others up, not holding them down. The assembly had grown beyond anyone's expectations. Species that had been isolated for centuries were now contributing to galactic civilization. Technologies that had been suppressed were now improving life for billions. Fleet Admiral Su-young reported that the galaxy's first integrated defense force was operational. Ships crewed by multiple species, using combined technologies, defending all worlds equally, she announced. No species stands alone anymore. Dr. Nari and her research team made contact with civilizations in the neighboring Andromeda galaxy. "We're ready to expand beyond our own star cluster," she reported. "And this time, we'll do it right." Captain Isul commanded the first intergalactic expedition. Her crew included representatives from every major species in the assembly. They carried a simple message to whoever they might find. "We come in peace, as equals, seeking friendship." As the celebration ended, Chancellor Hyun-woo looked out at the assembly hall filled with beings from across the galaxy. Humans sat next to former council species. Liberated prisoners worked alongside their former guards. Scientists from dozens of worlds shared discoveries that benefited everyone. "This is what we fought for," he said quietly to President Minho. "Not conquest, not revenge, just the chance for everyone to reach their potential." Commander Young-soo, now serving as Director of Galactic Security, had disbanded most of his Special Forces units. "We don't need soldiers anymore," he explained to his former troops. "We need teachers, builders, and explorers." The human dreadnoughts that had once seemed so threatening were now being converted into mobile research stations and aid ships. The Soul's Pride had become a flying hospital. The Inchun's Hammer was now a deep space exploration vessel.